L'Jarius Sneed is officially a Tennessee Titan, and concerns about his knee are completely overblown. I'll tell you why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. L'Jarius Sneed is officially a Tennessee Titan, and he talked about his knee issues himself, which I think are completely overblown. I'll go over what Sneed had to say. Also, Titans GM Carthon talked about the needs on this team. He had a lot of interesting things to say. I'll go over those. And if the Titans do trade down in the first round, they better get a lot more than what some of you guys are saying. So I'll do a little Roland's rant on that as well. Before we get into today's show, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Again, the 2024 Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Series, where I go position by position, is coming soon. You're not going to want to miss it. We go over 180 prospects or more every year. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But with that being said, again, L'Jarius Sneed officially introduced as a Tennessee Titan. He had his press conference on Tuesday, and he said a lot of great stuff, but I think the most important thing here is the concerns about the knee. When L'Jarius Sneed was traded for, there were a ton of people out there worried about the knee. There was all these rumors out there. I think it was Tony Pauline who went on a local Nashville radio station and said there's an issue, a knee issue with Sneed. It'll come down to the exams, how comfortable the team is with it. All of that. Said he wasn't able to practice, told it was serious, but he played through all that different stuff. And I just want to reiterate here, we're talking about a player who has played 15 games or more every single season for the last 3 years. We are talking about a player who played the second most snaps in the NFL last year. So if you're going to say, oh, I'm worried about the knee, where is the evidence that the knee is an issue? Where does that show up in time missed, in games missed? Last year, L'Jarius Sneed missed one game, and it was the last game of the season because the Chiefs were resting some of their top starters. So this is not, if L'Jarius Sneed, it's just crazy to me that, there are people out there who, wanted T. Higgins so desperately. Well, he missed 10 games in the last 4 years. But L'Jarius Sneed has missed 2, 3, and most of them for rest. And now that's something that we need to be worried about. I just think it's absolutely absurd. And L'Jarius Sneed talked about his knee at his opening press conference. He said, quote, "Ain't nothing wrong with my knee. I'm fine. I played a whole season, and years before that, I played as well. I had a couple problems. I had a banged up knee before, but I'm good right now. Nothing is wrong with my knee." He was asked whether it was something that he had to manage. He said no, and said, "I know what I have to do with my knee. I'm coming out here to play ball." Now, he may have said no, he doesn't need to manage the knee, but then he followed that up with, "I know what I have to do with my knee." And in a roundabout way, to me, that does kind of sound like management, but I don't care. I don't care about that. If you're telling me that L'Jarius Sneed needs to be limited in some practices during the season, I don't care. I am not somebody who is overly concerned about veterans practicing. Practice is so important for chemistry, especially on offense with the quarterback and the wide receivers. But you establish that stuff during training camp. You establish that stuff during the run-up to the season. Do I care if L'Jarius Sneed misses a Thursday practice in week 9? No. Why would I care about that? why would that be something that's concerning to me? So again, I think that the knee concerns with L'Jarius Sneed are completely overblown. I think this is a fantastic move. The trade value, the contract, the player that L'Jarius Sneed is. If you're a Titans fan who's hung up on the knee issues, I think you're just doomsday status at that point. There is no reason to be alarmed based on the evidence that we truly have in front of us. And Sneed talked about some other stuff that I thought really stood out to me. He had a quote on Calvin Ridley saying, "Nobody runs routes like that guy." I love hearing that. I mean, he went up against Calvin Ridley head-to-head last year, had great success against him in their matchup, but he knows Calvin Ridley is one of the best route runners in the NFL. That is what I remember when A.J. Brown was saying that at the beginning of A.J.'s career, how Calvin Ridley was one of his top 5 wide receivers because he is the best route runner, him and Amari Cooper. So, again, I am so excited that L'Jarius Sneed is a Tennessee Titan. He was a number 1 target for me going into free agency before he got the franchise tag. I was worried about trading him for him. Didn't want to trade for him because I was worried the Titans would have to give up their 2nd-round pick. But a 3rd-round pick in 2025, I'm sorry, there's just nothing. There's nothing for me to be concerned about. And some people worry, hey, now he's got a big paycheck. He's got a couple rings. Is he going to? L'Jarius Sneed even addressed that. He said, money don't change anything. I love this game. Money is to get my family right. All right, I guess there are certain players who will get money and quit working. That's absolutely happened in professional sports since the dawn of time. But listen to the guy talk. Look at the look in his eyes when he talks about playing football. This is not going to be an issue with L'Jarius Sneed. The Titans got a fantastic corner. And my favorite quote, I think, of the entire press conference was when Calvin Ridley said, "My goal is to eliminate the best player on the other offense." He said that forces teams to rearrange their offense, to change their plan. L'Jarius Sneed is the type of guy to make an offense totally change their game plan in the middle of the game if he has completely eliminated their top wide receiver, which he did all season long last year. So I was very impressed by L'Jarius Sneed's opening press conference. Very impressed by his responses to certain issues or critiques or certain questions. Of course, also want to point out L'Jarius Sneed, pretty good singer. Titans posted a fun clip of him singing in his sit down with the team media. I was pretty impressed. He picked the right career. I'm not going to act like he's a songbird or anything like that, but very impressive secret talent for L'Jarius Sneed. I was joking on Twitter, but imagine L'Jarius Sneed locking you down, shutting you down, driving you into the dirt with press coverage, all the while he's singing in your ear, not talking trash, just singing at you. That would be endlessly frustrating for NFL wide receivers. But again, very excited, very happy with the deal for L'Jarius Sneed. He is officially a Tennessee Titan, and I think the concerns about his knee are completely overblown, and there's not really a lot of evidence to be concerned with. Earlier last week, my everydayers will remember, I talked about L'Jarius Sneed's practice schedule with some data from F-Words that I think pointed it out pretty clearly that the concerns are incredibly overblown. But with that being said, Carthon gave an excellent press conference after L'Jarius Sneed, and he talked about a lot of the big needs remaining on this team, and I think you'll be very interested to hear what he had to say. So I'm going to dive into what Carthon had to say right now. Before I do, though, want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, whether it's sports, whether it's comedy, whether it's theater. It doesn't matter. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. And I'm not just telling you that. I buy all of my tickets on Game Time. They have excellent features. Killer last-minute deals. They have all-in prices. So, the price that you see is the price you're going to pay for your tickets, which is very uncommon in the industry. You get a view from your seat so you have an accurate idea of what it's going to look like when you sit down. And Game Time has a lowest price guarantee. And it's MLB season. So I would tell you, it is a great time to get some tickets for the MLB. Go Reds. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed's opening press conference, why I think concerns about the knee are completely overblown. Now I want to talk about what Carthon had to say, because the Titans general manager had a lot of good nuggets and a lot of good information after L'Jarius Sneed spoke. So I'm going to get into all of that. And at the end of the show, I'm going to go on a Roland's rant about what the Titans should get back if they trade down in the first round, because your guys' sights are set way too low, in my opinion. But before I dive into it, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, NFL Draft Preview Series starting soon. You're not going to want to miss it. Get subscribed, stay subscribed. I've been in the lab watching film of all these prospects. Got some good film videos for the Tic Tac Titans channel in the works as well. So very excited to get into all of that draft stuff as we get closer to next week. And I thought it was funny that Carthon even said that next week, the Titans are getting heavy into their draft meetings. I know they've probably already been ranking players, having conversations, but next week they're really getting heavy into it. And hey, so aren't we. But want to start out here. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed. I'm going to start with what Rand had to say about the cornerback position, because to me, it's been completely solved. And Rand said, we have a legitimate top 3 cornerback situation now. He said, all these players match what we want to do on defense. Okay. With L'Jarius Sneed, Cheeto, and Roger McCreary, the Titans have 2 of the 4 cornerbacks in the NFL last year that didn't allow a touchdown. Sneed and Roger. Man, Roger is so underrated. Some of Titans fans even don't understand how good Roger McCreary is. Be doing a video on him eventually as well on the film channel. But this just, again, reinforces my belief of what the Tennessee Titans are going to do on defense. Look, Denard Wilson has never been a defensive coordinator, so we don't know exactly what his scheme is going to look like, but the clues are there. He's talked about his biggest influences as coaches: Greg Williams, Todd Bowles. Pressure, pressure, pressure in your face on the line of scrimmage, confusing the defense, attacking, aggressive, man coverage. Like, that is what we are hearing. And when Carthon says this, they match what we want to do on defense. And we know that L'Jarius Sneed is one of the most physical man coverage corners in the entire NFL. Well, if you don't believe what I'm saying about the defense at this point schematically, I don't have any other evidence for you. Like, there's nothing else I can do here. So really excited about that. And again, Carthon basically confirming what I was expecting to see from Denard Wilson's defense. But of course, once we see it in action in the season, we'll know a little bit more and we can confirm all of that. But it seems pretty clear-cut if you're reading between the lines here. But getting into what Carthon had to say about some of the biggest needs on this team. Number 1, offensive tackle. So obviously everyone's freaking out about offensive tackle. And I got to tell you guys, I think it's becoming more obvious that Carthon wants to get multiple offensive tackles in the NFL draft. I think it is obvious at this point. He talked about, hey, there are still good players available in free agency, players that have played a ton of snaps. And then he said, not to get too far ahead, but the offensive tackle draft class is pretty deep. This is not the first time that we've heard that from Carthon. Like, this isn't the first time. He has said on multiple occasions now that the draft class at offensive tackle is deep. I got to tell you guys, I think it's pretty obvious they're going to draft 2 of them, because they said Nicholas Petit-Ferrer and Jalen Duncan will work at tackles, but they said Dylan Radins and Sadiq Charles are going to start out at guard. So the only tackles on the roster are Jalen Duncan and MPF. I mean, to me, it seems pretty clear. They're like, this is one of the, maybe the best at least prospect ranking wise. Obviously, once we get into their careers, we'll know more. But this has a chance to be the best draft class of offensive tackles ever. Like with the amount of talent. Oh, just dropped my headphone case on the ground. Sorry to interrupt. But, I just think it's clear at this point from what Carthon has said multiple times during this offseason about the depth of the draft class that they're probably going to go after too. And if they do that, and if they want to do that, then the best thing that they can do is trade down in the second round. You take Joe Alt at number 7. You trade down from 38 to 45 to 51, somewhere in there. You take a defensive player, and then you draft another offensive tackle with the third-round pick that you pick up in your second-round trade back. I really think that is a logical move for the Titans. And when you hear Carthon talk about some of this stuff, it makes sense. I mean, he talked about defensive line. So moving from offensive tackle to the defensive line, he says, we're still looking to add. Free agency is not over. Still got the draft. Still looking to add up front on both sides of the ball. So Carthon obviously knows that the Titans still desperately need reinforcements on the lines. He admitted that, and I agree 100%. All right? There are going to be guys in free agency that you can add, but the Titans definitely need to add some in the draft as well. He talked about safety, and he talked about it in a similar way that he talked about offensive tackle, but even more so about free agency. He said, we're well-positioned, and we were well-positioned and well thought out in our plan of being able to attack post-draft. Sign if we need to. He is telling you guys that they're going to address safety in free agency, but probably after the draft. He also said the amount of safeties on the street now, there is a plethora of guys who have played a lot of ball. We will continue to look at that market. Draft prep probably takes priority now. There are so many good safeties and veteran safeties still on the market. Why would the Titans overpay to get one now? What you do is you go into the NFL draft. If you don't get anybody that you like, it doesn't line up to get a safety that you think can help. Well, then after the draft, there's basically another wave of free agency when teams are like, well, we wanted to address this position in the draft, but the value wasn't there, so we'll just go sign a one-year Band-Aid veteran and move on for now. That is what the Titans are going to do at linebacker, at safety, in my opinion. That's and we talked about Andrews Pete at offensive tackle being a guy who could be on that list. Maybe the Titans don't bring Andrews Pete in right now. Why would they? If they don't get the tackles that they expect to get in the draft, then yeah, you bring in a veteran. So to me, Carthon is literally telling you what their thought process is out in the open. And also very much a breath of fresh air with the transparency and how entertaining Carthon is to listen to. He talked about linebacker as well, and there are a lot of people freaking out who's going to be the green dot. And if you don't recognize the term, the green dot is the player who calls the plays. They're the one who has the radio in their helmet from the coaches that gets the play to the coaches and tells everybody where to line up and what the play is. That's what a green dot is. They didn't say whether Kenneth Murray would do that because Kenneth Murray isn't in the building right now. But Carthon even said, quote, we haven't crossed that bridge yet. He says, honestly, we don't even have Murray in the building right now. He'll be here next week. Once the players are able to get with our coaches, I totally trust linebackers coach Frank Bush and defensive coordinator Denard Wilson to figure out who will be the best to lead the group and get them lined up. He even referenced Fred Warner. He said Fred Warner's first year, he was the green dot as a rookie. So it's all about the person and what that person is comfortable with. And if they're able to handle the communication and they're a 3-down player, and then they'll be out there. He said, I've seen teams, he mentioned Eric Weddle with the Chargers, that give that job to a safety, not even a linebacker. So he says, quote, it's just about finding that person that's going to be able to do that and still effectively do their job. So in my opinion, based on what we heard, linebacker, offensive tackle, looking like the draft. Safety, defensive line, looking like free agency, but probably after the draft. And when we talked about draft, free agency, or both, my everydayers will remember, that kind of lines up with what I expected and what I thought. So good stuff from Carthon there. He also told an excellent story about when they signed Calvin Ridley and how quickly it all went down. Check out all of that at Tennessee Titans. .com or Tennessee Titans on social media. Great video there. But with that being said, I got a Roland's rant for you guys to finish off the show about a trade down in the first round. Before I dive in, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, the sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL. There's NFL future stuff on there as well. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed's opening press conference. We talked about what Carthon had to say about the Titans' biggest needs. Now I just want to finish the show with a Roland's rant on the first round trade down. Before I get into it, thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen. Also want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. But I've been seeing a lot of comments from people. There was a comment on one of my Facebook posts. I saw a Titans-related account say something about this as well. I've seen a lot of people in my comments, on my shows, regular discussions online, say that the Titans should trade down in the first round to pick up an extra third-round pick. All right, listen. Y'all know, if you've been listening, my everydayers, I don't want to trade down in the first round at all, period. I don't want to do it. I think that the sacrifice of missing out on the top tier of players, Neighbors, Adunze, like the sacrifice of missing out on those guys is not worth it to drop down for a third-round pick. Like, would you rather have Joe Alt, or would you rather have Fashanu in a third-round pick? Like, would you rather have Joe Alt, or would you rather have J.C. Latham in a third-round pick? To me, the answer is easy. I would rather have Joe Alt. Like, it's not even a question. Why take the risk on a player like Fashanu with tiny hands and who has struggled in run blocking? Why would you take the risk on a guy like J.C. Latham, who has slow feet and gets beat inside and has height and weight measurements that have completely failed in the first round of the NFL draft in recent memory? Why would you take those risks when you could just take Joe Alt, plug and play, left tackle, 10 years? Maybe he's an all-pro. Maybe he's just a pro bowler. Maybe he's just a very good left tackle, and he's not Laramie Tunsil or, some of the big dogs like Trent Williams. Maybe he's not that. But maybe he's Taylor Lewan. Maybe he's Colton Miller. Maybe he's Jake Matthews. Like, just a solid veteran tackle who can play for a decade, who you don't have to worry about. The Titans cannot afford to take that risk and drop back, and especially not for a third-round pick. This is my real point, okay? This is my real point. If the Titans trade down in the first round, they better get more than a third-round pick. If they go from 7 to 11 or 7 to 12 or 7 to 13 or 7 to 14, like, you better get more than a third-round pick. What are we talking about? Y'all are nuts. I'm not dropping from 7 to 12 or 11 or 13 or 14 for a third-rounder. You better pay more than that. Look at previous trades in the first round that are similar. The Cardinals, last year, they traded back to 12, but then they traded back up to 6. They gave the Lions number 12, number 34, the second pick in the second round, which they ended up trading to the Titans, and a 5th-round pick. So they went from 6 to 12, got the second pick in the second round and a 5th-rounder. And you want to make that move for a 3rd? What? It doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't. Look at some other trades. The Texans, when they moved up to 3rd overall, they gave up 12, a 1st-rounder this year in 2024, the 1st pick in the second round, number 33, and a 3rd-rounder this year. And you want to drop back from 7 to 12, 13, 14, 11 for just a 3rd-rounder? What? Getting scammed is what that is. That is getting scammed. If the Titans pass on Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze to pick 85, I'm going to be livid. I am going to be beside myself. What an absolute smoke job that would be on Ran Carthon. I refuse to believe that Ran Carthon would do that. Not only that, but another example from 2022, the Saints went from 16 to 11. That's not even going into the top 10. And they gave up 16, 98, and 120. So a 3rd-rounder, a 4th-rounder, and 5 picks later. And you only want a 3rd to move up to 7, probably for a quarterback? Nah. Now, maybe the Titans won't be able to get an additional 1st-round pick next year. All right? Which is why I don't want them to do it all. That's why I don't want them to do it at all, because they're not getting a 1st-round pick next year. But if they got a 2nd-round pick, now that would be adequate value. If the Titans were to trade down from 7 to 11 with the Vikings, well, I think that the Titans would be right to expect the Vikings to throw in a 2nd-round pick. Maybe they don't throw in 23. Of course, I wouldn't love, but it would make sense for the Titans to get 11 and 23 for number 7. I don't think that the Vikings would do that, but I mean, at this point, the Vikings don't have a 2nd-rounder. So if you don't have a 2nd-rounder, and you don't have, the Vikings have 11, 23, and 108. So if you're trading down from 7 to 11, it better be 11 and 23. Because I'm not taking 11 and 108 to move down from 7 and pass on Joe Alt, Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors to get Fashanu or Fuanga. No, we're not doing that. Not doing that. So I'm just saying, this whole rant, the whole point is, set your expectations higher, because the Titans dang sure better get more than a 3rd-round pick if they drop back out of 7. Period. Point blank, period. Because if you look at trades and you look at examples, they should absolutely be getting more than that. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's show. Thinking we might have an offensive tackle discussion tomorrow, but we'll see. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.